Hello everyone, and welcome back to another trail adventure. Today we're heading out onto the beautiful Sentier du Souvenir, exploring the stunning landscapes around the Hosdorf Plateau. As so often, the journey begins in Bigelbach, the perfect starting point for another day surrounded by nature, forests, and endless trails. At the beginning, the trail followed a well-marked path downhill, making for a smooth and relaxed start to the adventure. But before long, the route became a little more wild and adventurous, forcing me to find my own way across an open meadow. For a short moment, it felt as if the trail had simply disappeared into nature itself. But soon enough, I was welcomed back into a lush green forest, surrounded once again by the peaceful atmosphere of the woods and the fresh scent of nature all around me. One of the small highlights along the trail was this beautiful little waterfall. And honestly, discovering it felt even more special, because despite having lived in this region for almost 40 years, I had never seen it before. Moments like these are a perfect reminder that nature always has hidden gems waiting to be discovered, even in places you think you already know by heart. Shortly afterwards, I made my way into Wallendorf, where the next part of the adventure was already waiting for me. Crossing the border bridge into Germany felt like stepping into a completely new chapter of the trail, as I entered the beautiful Southern Eifel Nature Park. But only for a short while, because just beyond Wallendorf, the trail led me back into Luxembourg once again, and waiting there was the first of 3 major climbs of the day. Step by step, the path began rising up toward the Hosdorf Plateau, leaving the valley behind and slowly opening up to wider views across the landscape. The climb demanded some effort, but the quiet forest surroundings and the feeling of gaining elevation made it an enjoyable challenge, rather than a burden. It was there that I first crossed paths with the Sentier du Souvenir, but instead of joining the trail immediately, I decided to take a small detour in order to collect a few extra kilometers and additional elevation gain along the way. So I continued on toward Hosdorf, a small and charming little village right along the Luxembourg-German border. Quiet, peaceful, and surrounded by nature, it felt like one of those hidden places that perfectly matched the calm atmosphere of the trail itself. The climb out of Hosdorf was absolutely brutal. Honestly, it was one of those sections where every single step suddenly feels twice as hard, and the trail seems to rise endlessly in front of you. Unfortunately, I forgot to properly configure my Phoenix 8 beforehand, so I can't tell you exactly how steep the climb really was. But trust me, my legs definitely felt every meter of it. After covering 27 kilometers the day before in my trail running shoes, slipping into my Asics running shoes felt like walking on clouds. The softer cushioning and lighter feel were an absolute blessing for my tired legs and aching feet. By the way, I had finally reached the Sentier du Souvenir. Along the trail, informative panels appear at regular intervals, telling the story of the dramatic events that once unfolded in this peaceful landscape. The Hosdorf Plateau was a critical and heavily contested strategic area near the German-Luxembourg border during the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. Located between the Our and Cher rivers, it became a key position for both German offensives and American counterattacks between December 1944 and February 1945. Walking these quiet forest trails today, surrounded only by nature and silence, it's almost impossible to imagine the intensity of the battles that once took place here. The contrast between the peaceful scenery and the weight of history makes this trail feel even more powerful and unforgettable. Once I reached the top, my next destination was already visible in the distance. Bettendorf, lying around 210 meters lower down in the Sauer Valley below. After the exhausting climb, seeing the landscape suddenly open up again felt incredibly rewarding. And somewhere along the way, there was even time for a small race with a few young cows. The curious little herd suddenly started running alongside me across the field, turning an already memorable trail into a genuinely funny moment. Once I reached Bettendorf down in the valley, the main challenge of the day was waiting for me. 175 meters in just 2 kilometers, because there was only one way forward now, straight back up onto the plateau again. After already covering so many kilometers, seeing the trail rise steeply ahead was both intimidating and motivating at the same time. My legs were getting heavier, my breathing deeper, but step by step, the climb slowly began to unfold beneath me. The climb back up was rewarded with some truly beautiful views. In the distance, I could already see Hosdorf, while behind me Bettendorf slowly disappeared further and further into the valley below. Every now and then I stopped to film the scenery, and honestly, those short filming breaks were the perfect excuse to let my heart rate settle a little before continuing the ascent. Can you see the trail? No? Yeah, neither could I. That's how incredibly steep the terrain dropped away behind me. Looking back down the slope almost felt unreal, as if the path had simply disappeared straight into the valley below. Another information panel marked the remains of an American dugout hidden deep within the forest. Standing in front of that covered hole in the ground, surrounded by silence and trees, it was impossible not to pause for a moment and think about the past. If this place could speak, it would probably tell stories far beyond anything we could truly imagine. Stories of fear, exhaustion, survival, and the brutal winter battles that once shaped this peaceful landscape. Once I reached the top, I could already spot my destination far off in the distance. But unfortunately, the trail still had one final challenge waiting for me. A long descent followed by another 150 meters of elevation gain packed into just 3.2 kilometers. At that point, my legs were definitely feeling the effort. But the motivation of getting closer to the finish, combined with the incredible views surrounding me, gave me the energy to keep pushing forward. Once I arrived down in the beautiful village of Reisdorf, I began preparing myself mentally for the final climb of the day. And because I know this section of trail very well, I already knew exactly what kind of monster was waiting for me. The climb may have been short, but it was brutally steep, with gradients of over 30% ahead of me. Looking up the trail, it almost felt as if the path was climbing straight into the sky. At that point, it was no longer about speed. It was about digging deep, controlling the breathing, and simply refusing to stop. The camera honestly doesn't do this climb any justice at all. No matter how steep it looks on the footage, trust me, in reality it feels far more brutal. By the way, does anyone know what kind of machine that was that suddenly came flying past me during the final 1.5 kilometers of the trail? Honestly, had no idea what I was looking at for a moment. It moved so fast that it almost felt like something straight out of a sci-fi movie racing through the fields. And with that, another adventure comes to an end. After 20 kilometers and nearly 700 meters of elevation gain, I finally made my way back into Bigelbach, tired, but completely satisfied after an incredible day out on the trails. Thank you all so much for watching, liking, and commenting. Your support truly means a lot and motivates me to keep exploring and sharing these adventures with you. Hopefully, I'll see you again very soon on another trail. Bye-bye, and happy trails.